So today I want to talk about the negative impact that feminism has played in my life. And I just want to say that, to start, that this isn't in any way to judge or criticize other feminists. I know that that's like a big buzzword right now, and people feel really passionate about that as part of their identity, and that's fine. This video isn't for you, or to make any kind of commentary on your life. It's about just my experience. That's all it is. I'm just sharing my experience. And I guess to start, I was kind of an unwitting feminist. I didn't really know how much I had been shaped by that dominant narrative in the culture until I got pregnant with my son, and things didn't work out with his dad pretty quickly on, and I knew that I couldn't raise my son with him. And I won't really get into that, like, for privacy reasons, but it wasn't like just, oh, I didn't want to, or like, I don't like you anymore. It was because there was some pretty significant reasons why it was a dysfunctional relationship. So, but in my feminist mind, I was just like, fine, no big deal. I'll raise my son myself. I don't need no man. Like, I really believed that that was going to be totally fine, and there was going to be no negative repercussions for myself or my son. And boy, was I wrong, because it pretty quickly proved to be incredibly challenging, just in a material way, because I was one person and I needed to do the work of two people. I needed to provide financially. I needed to, obviously wanted to spend time with my son. Every waking moment that I could be with him, I wanted to be with him. And I just felt torn in two. I remember like having to go back to work pretty quickly. He was a baby, and, you know, just crying because I didn't want to go back to work. I wanted to be with my baby. And I don't mean crying just like, you know, boo-hoo. It was like a deep soul longing to spend time with this little human who needed me, and feeling like I couldn't. And every day, you know, every day, the best hours of the day were given over to working for somebody else. And thank God that I have a supportive family, and that my parents were supportive, and I could at least often leave him with people who loved him, and had like a personal stake in his development. But yeah, so, you know, it was physically challenging, materially, financially, on the one hand, but it was such a burden in so many other ways to not have a partner, to not have a match, and not just anyone, like to have the baby's father, the other person who's responsible for their life here on earth. And I just, in my ignorance, didn't realize what a toll that was going to take for the long term, not just for infancy, but for our entire lives, the rest of our lives. That tragedy of not being able to be a family and thinking, oh, no big deal, I'll just do it on my own. How that would just be painful for years. And it was all because of the feminist indoctrination that I'd had since a kid. You know, we grew up, like, I'm a millennial. We grew up with very much like girl boss, kind of like, you can do it all. You can have a career, and you can fight bad guys with one arm, and you can you know, be the Tomb Raider, and then you can also be a mom, and you can also be sexy, and you can also be, it's just like very chaotic programming for young girls, I think, and I think it's not realistic. And so I definitely had some of that, like naivety, just delusional thinking that I could just do it on my own and it was totally fine. And what that cost me was huge, because what that has cost me, buying into the feminist ideology that I don't need no man, that a family isn't important, that women shouldn't relegate themselves to wanting a family, to wanting to be a mother. That's like thing of the past. That's antiquated. These are the things I thought. You know, I can't speak for anyone else, and this video is definitely not intended to to hurt people or make them feel badly. It's just because I think that it's important to talk about this, how feminism is affecting us, especially for younger girls. You know, if somebody's out there thinking these same thoughts, you know, I don't want a family. I definitely don't want to have kids. That's totally fine. If that's your you know, your own life decision, of course, that's fine. But I never stopped to think why I thought those things, and how that thinking would affect me. And so, you know, I had my son, but then I thought, that's it. I don't want to have a family, you know, I don't want to invest in being a mom. Other than my son, of course, like I love my son more than words can express, and I love being his mom, but it was not like my goal in life to be a mom of a bunch of kids and be a wife, and that was just not my goal, because I had allowed the culture to tell me that was demeaning and a thing of the past, and for ignorant women maybe. I think I believed that deep down, even if I would never say that to somebody. And now I see, you know, coming back to my faith in Christ and seeing the world with totally new eyes, because I've been on one end of the spectrum. I've been married to a woman, believing that I was lesbian, thinking that I was a witch, being like totally wrapped up in the new age and all of that, and realizing about the world that we actually live in, that evil is a real thing. And then what do you do with that? Like what is the remedy for that? And I believe that it's Jesus Christ, that he's a real person, and that God, this supreme being who Jesus is a physical expression of in the material world, has given us a blueprint for the best way to live, right? And it to me, that's logical, because if there's this intelligent being, and I'm just going to use that pronoun. I know that could be triggering to some people, but that's the pronoun that is used in the Bible, which is the library of books, I believe, is the blueprint from God. They use the pronoun he, so I'm going to use that. Even though I think God is beyond gender. But this divine, all-knowing being that the Bible clearly tells us is love, is ultimately love, right? Gave us an outline for how to live best in the world. And I think that logically lines up, right? If this being is a person and has a personality and it desires relationship with humans, which I think all of creation alludes to, and the Bible definitely alludes to that, then it would make sense that this being is going to give us some kind of guidance. It's not just going to be like, turn you loose and just do whatever, do what thou wilt, which is the tenet of Satanism. It's like, no, there's an ideal way to operate in this world, right? It's just like anything we do, right? There's an ideal way to drive on the road that allows for the least amount of accidents and the most safe driving, right? We have rules, we have stoplights, and we have turn signals and all of these things, this order, the sense of order out of chaos that gives us direction and that makes our life make sense. And we see that all around the world in both natural and in things that humans have created. And so I kind of got off on a tangent there, but so I believe that God gave us an ideal way to live, right? And then that's outlined in the Bible. And in the Bible, it says very clearly that God created male and female creatures, and humans specifically, to get married. The ideal situation would be to get married and live a life of love and mutual respect, and create humans out of that you then raise with love and mutual respect, and you continue on the line of trying to make the world a better place. And that's not to say everybody has to do that, of course. We're talking about a spectrum here. Not everyone is going to have 8 kids and live a happy married life. That's fine. But I didn't allow myself to entertain that idea because I thought that was just stupid, ignorant, old school, like for people who weren't awakened to like consciousness and weren't awakened to like the evolution of humans as we are now. And so I was wrong, and I realized that, and I guess I had to go through the difficulty. I had to go through doing it my own way and like coming up against the rock in a hard place to see my flaws and the flaws in my thinking. And I see now that the way God intended it is beautiful, and that if I had to imagine an ideal life now, I would want a partner. I would want a husband who cares for me and respects me and loves me and wants to make babies with me, and that to me is beautiful. Who wants to provide. I see another way that feminism distorted my thinking was that the traditional gender roles are somehow bad, and that they're putting us in boxes, that they're putting us in shackles, especially as women, right? You shouldn't want to be in the kitchen cooking for a husband. You should want to go out in the workforce and climb up the corporate ladder and do these things. And I don't want to do those things. There's nothing in me that wants to climb the corporate ladder or even invest a lot in my own professional success. I am a professional. I am a doctor of acupuncture and Chinese medicine. And I love my job, and I love that I get to help people. But as far as like, that's my entire identity and everything that I am is wrapped up in that is not how I feel, actually. I feel like I want to have a family. I want to have a bigger family and invest in raising children and adopting children. And well, first I would have to get married to do that. I'm not married right now. But, I see that there's an intended sense of balance in the order that God created, with a man who is the protector and the provider and is wired biologically to go out and do those things. And a woman is more nurturing. A woman has this just incredible sensitivity to the needs of others and to her intuition. And that is an incredible gift, especially when you're dealing with nonverbal infants or you're dealing with elderly, sick people. You need to rely on that fountain of intuition a lot of times. It makes women great nurses, great doctors, great healthcare providers, great therapists. And it also makes them great mothers and great wives. And that's nothing to be ashamed of. But I did find shame in it. I did think it was almost shameful. And it's crazy to think about now, like saying that that's shameful to want to be a mom and have a bunch of babies. But I did think that. And, feminism made me put off wanting to have a family, wanting to invest in that. And now, I'm in my 40s. I'm 41. And I still can have babies, and I can definitely adopt children. But that's something that I don't think we're being honest with women about, is that when you put off childbearing, marriage, and then you put off childbearing, it's harder to do those things later in life. It's not impossible, of course not, but it's harder because, people are getting married like from 20s and 30s, and they're investing in families. A lot of straight people are doing that, right? And when you don't prioritize that, there is more of a chance that it's not going to work out for you to find the right person and have the babies and do all that before, your egg production dwindles, or I guess not your egg production, but your fertility window. Yeah, so I guess that the point of what I'm trying to say is feminism hurt me. And I'm not a victim. Like, I believe it was all for a reason. I had to go through that to understand that the ways of God are better, and they're good for us. And God gave us these blueprints because he loves us and wants what's best for us. And I really believe that now. And I grew up, in a Christian home, but I rejected all of those things. And I thought it was just like the patriarchy trying to come down on me and using religion to oppress me as a woman. And I see now, of course, that can happen. Like, I'm not saying that that's never happened and that people haven't used religion to oppress anyone, male or female, but especially women. It happens all around the world, and other religions other than Christianity too. I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but I'm saying, again, my experience of how I was hurt by it. Feminism was a negative development in my life. I can't go back and change it, but I can share what's happened for me. I can tell other people about it and just speak the truth, how it's been for me. And hopefully that can help somebody out there question, just question, like, what do you really want for your life? And it's easy when you're younger, I think, to think you have all the time in the world. You feel like that, and you do. You have 20 years to be, if you're 20, you have over 20 years to be fertile and to have babies. And so it seems like forever, but I think it's really important to think about who you are going to be when you're 50, when you're 60. Those are the years that can feel really long, I think. I mean, obviously I'm not there yet, so I can't know for sure, but I see now, as I've come to this like midlife more era, that these years after your children grow up, or if you don't have children, you don't have children, but they're long years, and they're years when people can feel lonely. I have so many patients who are in their 50s, 60s, 70s. They either don't have kids, or they had one or two kids and their kids don't live nearby, and they're dealing with incredible loneliness. And that's a long time to feel lonely. And I'm not saying have kids so that they can entertain you or, take your mind off your own suffering or loneliness. I'm not saying to use children. But what I'm saying is that there was a beautiful natural order put in place by our Creator because it works. We care for the children when they're too young to care for themselves. And then as we get older, they do the same for us. It's really a beautiful process. It's a beautiful balance. When you're 60, 70, something that people will tell me is so healing is when their grandkids come over and they bring that life into the house, right? And they bring that spark and that joy, and they reinvigorate the older people, the grandparents, you know, and that multi-generational kind of setup and what we learn from each other. I see how my son, he's so his relationship with his grandpa is so beautiful, and they learn so much from each other. And my dad is so good with my son, and he's so good at sharing and explaining things that I can't, because I'm not there yet. You know, my dad is wiser and older and has lived more of life. And just, I guess I just would encourage you all, when you think about that question, like, do I want to have kids? Do I want to have a family? Don't just think about how it feels now, because when you're younger and your life is busy and you're working, you're going to school or you're working or you're doing both, you have all these friends and you have all these things on your to-do list, and life is full. It's really easy to be like, I don't want to have kids, like, or I'll put it off. And I would just encourage you, if there's any desire there for you to have kids or have a family, that you really wrestle with that you talk to God about it, that you search your soul and really try to imagine what life is going to be like when it's not busy anymore, when you don't have a ton of friends knocking on your door, you don't have all these suitors who want to date you, maybe you live alone, and what 10, 20, 30 years of that is going to feel like. And that's not to like instill fear. I mean, some people love that. Some people love living alone, and they're totally fine and content to do their projects and, you know, work and have hobbies, and that's great. Again, this is not intended to make anyone feel guilty for their life choices or to scare anyone into making life choices that I, you know, want for my life. It's just somebody sharing their experience. And I guess it's a video I made because I wish I had seen a video like this or had a conversation like this when I was in my 20s or even 30s. You know, I wish that somebody had sat me down and said, what do you think your life is going to be like when you're 50, 60? What do you want it to be like? Who do you want around you? Yeah. Anyway, I guess that's it. I'm gonna leave it there. I'm curious if anyone has any thoughts on what I shared. All right, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.